What up, and welcome to another edition of LSU Live, a very special edition as it appears that LSU now has its man, has its new coach in Lane Kiffin. It is unofficially official as On 3 Sports has reported that LSU is set to introduce Kiffin tomorrow in Baton Rouge as its new coach. Kiffin will be LSU's 33rd head coach all time. And this is a guy who's bounced around a bit, who's kind of settled in, who's repaired his reputation to an extent, but there's going to be some smoke that's going to come with this decision. And he understands that. Lane Kiffin, you better believe it. He understands what comes with the decision of leaving a playoff-bound team, playoff-bound program that you've built, a program that hasn't won anything even remotely consistently since the 50s or maybe the 60s when Arch was there, the original Archie. And he's built Ole Miss into this perennial contender. Ole Miss is pretty much locked in the playoffs this year. Even if they didn't make it this year, they're to the point to where they're in the discussion every year. I mean, at this point, Ole Miss's floor was 10 wins with Lane Kiffin. So LSU gets this man. Thank goodness for LSU because I have no idea what the backup plan would have been. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt signed an extension. Drinkwitz at Missouri signed an extension. So with Florida and Auburn kind of moving quickly, it makes you wonder where LSU would look if they didn't get Kiffin. But it appears that that's going to be a moot point as Kiffin has decided to come to LSU. And now you got a situation of you going from one ultimatum to another. Ole Miss either did or didn't give him an ultimatum of making a decision at a certain point. Whatever you want to call it, an understanding or ultimatum or whatever it was, we understood that Lane Kiffin was going to have to make a decision. Now it appears as though he has given his staff an ultimatum also. And this is also reported from CBS, amongst others, that he's telling his offensive staff, hey, look, y'all can come today or y'all can figure something else out. But I'm leaving and make a decision right now. So a meeting that was originally planned for 9 o'clock this morning has now been pushed to 1 o'clock this afternoon. He'll have his final discussions with Ole Miss. And apparently he'll decide who's going to come with him. One guy you might be wondering about as far as coming with Lane Kiffin is Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator. Very well-respected guy, young guy. But yeah, Golding is apparently going to stay. This is according to CBS Sports. He wants to stay at Ole Miss. He likes what he has there. But no worries, if Kiffin can come and lock down Blake Baker at LSU, then you don't have to worry about your defense. Now, it's not to say that this defense was perfect, but as you saw yesterday against Oklahoma, this defense has kept you in almost every game this year. Outside of A&M, the defense has kept you in it when you had an offense that couldn't do anything for you. So, more on Kiffin. What is LSU getting with Lane Kiffin? Kiffin is 116-53 all time. This is his all-time record as a college football coach. At Ole Miss, he's 55-19. And I will challenge you to find somebody who's had a better stretch at Ole Miss, a more impressive stretch than Kiffin or John Vaught. So leaving a team that's playoff bound, I think that this year has been it's been Lane's most impressive year, if you ask me. He's had more talent. But you look at what he's done. He's gone 11-1 this year with less talent than he had last year on the team that lost 3 games. So whether you want to blame him for last year or give him credit for this year, either way, it's pretty impressive what he's done this year. Especially end of the year with a quarterback you didn't start with. Excuse me. You go and get Trinidad Chambers, who nobody knew of out of Ferris State. Nobody had a clue who he was. All the talk this year was about Austin Simmons. And here we are with the regular season over, and Trinidad Chambers, of all people, has more 300-yard games than anybody else in high-level D1 football. And that's crazy because who was he? Nobody knew him. And you got to give Chambers credit. Yeah, he stepped up. He's taking advantage of the opportunity. But to go and find this guy and then to build your offense around him or to tailor your offense around him, it's pretty impressive. Ole Miss has won 10 games in 3 of the last 4 years. So just goes on to what I was saying earlier. 10 wins is the floor for Ole Miss. And look, 100 years ago when I was in college, that was not even close to being the case. And that's with Eli Manning. That was never the floor for Ole Miss. Ole Miss was pretty much a 7-8 win program. You'll have some years to where they might surprise you. Just look at it like this. SEC championship has been around for almost 30 years now, and Ole Miss has never been to the SEC championship. It says a lot. It says a lot about what Lane has done. And look, you got to give him credit for it. 2023, he led Ole Miss to its first 11-win season in history. In the history of Ole Miss, no team had ever won 11 games. And look, offense has obviously been a problem for LSU this year. Our offense, needless to say, will not be the issue. And look, I understand where LSU is right now as far as personnel, offensive line. You don't have quality starters. It's a mess at offensive line. It's questionable if you have an SEC level starting quarterback. Even if you do, you don't have a backup. So Lane has his work cut out for him in that first year. But a Lane Kiffin offense at Ole Miss has never finished lower than 35th. Never lower than 35th. Right now, it's scoring offense. Ole Miss is 13th in the country. But in his time there, they've been a top half at the very least. Most of the time, a top 20 in that range, but never lower than 35th since he's been there. So offense will not be the problem in all likelihood for LSU. Now, as for LSU, what is he doing for LSU right now? Okay, I just talked about the offense and how you look to have that rectified. I don't know to what extent in 2026. I don't know how much you can do next year because a lot of that is going to depend on how quickly he can get some offensive linemen in place. Look, I don't care how much of a genius you are or how smart you are, X and O-wise. It starts with protection. Now, it helps when you have somebody who can kind of game plan around the shortcomings better than what LSU had this past year, but you still got to have players in place. But let's look at LSU offense. Let's look at LSU and what they've done this season. LSU is they held Ole Miss to 24 points. LSU held Alabama to 20 points, and LSU held Oklahoma to 17 points all this year. LSU lost all 3 of those games. There's 24 points, 20 points, 17 points. And these are all playoff-bound teams that you held under 25 points, and you didn't win any of those games. That's nuts. That's crazy. But look, you look to kind of rectify that with what you got coming in with Lane. And who knows who we're going to bring with him. Look, Chambliss is a junior. He has another year. He can follow him. And I won't go too far into this because there's no way to know. It's too early. But even if you don't get Chambliss, don't forget Austin Simmons was – people were talking about Austin Simmons, believe it or not, being in the Heisman conversation before the year started, pretty much based off his tools and Lane's history with quarterbacks. So this is a guy who got beat out, who was in Heisman conversations. But it's not a knock on him. It's more of a testament to his potential and what he could be. So you're thinking, at the very least, you have your game plan resolved, you have your offense resolved. But look, he's a recruiter too. This is a guy who's a hell of a recruiter and maybe an even better evaluator. Jackson Dart came to Ole Miss from USC. When Jackson Dart left USC, he didn't know he would have a starting job at USC. Lincoln Riley came in with Caleb Williams, and you understood what was going to come with that. Caleb Williams didn't leave Oklahoma to come and sit on the bench. He was going to be the starter. So Jackson Dart leaves USC. He goes on to become highly drafted guy. I think Dart was high second round this year with the Giants, and he's had a good year, outside of injury with the Giants. So Jackson Dart is one example of Lane's ability to evaluate. I just talked about Chambliss. I think it's going to be hard-pressed to find a better example of somebody's skill in evaluating when you get a guy from Ferris State who's playing at an All-American level. You talked about Chambliss. You got Trey Harris, who played quarterback in high school, went to Louisiana Tech, played receiver, comes to Ole Miss, and he blows up. Trey Harris was easily one of the best wide receiver prospects in the draft last year. He goes in the second round. Another guy that Kiffin went and got. And it's not just offense when it comes to Kiffin. You don't give him all the credit because, he has assistants, he has recruiters, he has help evaluating these guys. But as the head coach, you get the majority of the blame, and you're also going to get the majority of the credit. So you had Dart, you had Trey Harris, but you also had 3 defensive linemen off that Ole Miss team in 2024 that got drafted. You had 8 total, which I think is the most that Ole Miss has ever gotten drafted in 1 year. You had 8 total guys getting drafted off that team. So, yeah, Lane Kiffin is absolutely a top-tier offensive mind, and that's at any level of football from college to pros. But he's also a hell of a recruiter. He's also a hell of an evaluator. Let's give him credit. This is not to say that everything is going to automatically work out when it comes to LSU, but when you look at it objectively, it's hard to see a scenario where it wouldn't as far as adding talent and having a consistent offense. It's looking like Pete Golding is going to stay, whether he comes or goes or whether you keep Blake Baker. I think Lane is to the point to where he's a pretty good coach evaluator too. He surrounded himself with some good guys, some talented guys. Going back to the Edo days back in USC. So he knows how to support himself with a competent staff. So you don't really worry about the defense, especially if you keep Blake Baker, but you most definitely do not worry about the offense if you're LSU. So you look at a guy who's top shelf offensively, game planning, play calling, feel for the game, knowing when to take a shot and not only win, but how to design shots. He gets the matchups he wants, and you see it game in and game out. No matter who he's playing against, no matter who's on the other side of the booth or the field, whatever, he's going to get desirable matchups, and he's going to take advantage of them. It's just a matter of how often. So when it comes to a high-level tactician combined with the high-level recruiter, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Kiffin is the best combination of these guys that LSU has had since Saban. And I know that's early. He hasn't won a championship, but who has? You talking about Dabo? Do you want Dabo? I don't. You got Kirby Smart, you got Dabo. You don't have a lot of people who have won a championship. You got Ryan Day. So that's 3 guys. So I'm not going to cut him because he hasn't won a championship. I'm not going to tear him down because of that. But just looking at this objectively as far as what he's done offensively and the personnel that he's been able to get at Ole Miss on a consistent basis, this is probably your best all-around guy since Saban. Now, will the results come? Will the championship results come? Time is going to tell on that. But I think this is as close as you can get to a home run hire for LSU. There are no sure things. There are no doubters. But looking at his resume and where he is as a coach right now, I think this is probably down there as close as you can get to a can't miss. Let's check out a few comments. We back up. Mr. Stent, we indeed are back up. Let's go Tigers. Thank you, sir. Trinidad is a senior. Trinidad, I'm pretty sure has another year of eligibility. And look, this is 2025 college football. It's always another year of eligibility. Dart was first round. Thanks, Ati Fresh. That's very helpful. Dart was first round. But yeah, that's even more of a testament to what I'm saying. Lane Kiffin went and got the guy from USC who was going to sit the bench. He came to Ole Miss and became a first round quarterback. So with the way that things are kind of shaping up right now, as far as Lane going on an ultimatum reportedly and saying, hey, look, y'all can let me coach the rest of the year in the playoffs, or I'm going to take some guys. I don't know if that's completely true or not, but I will say this. He was going to take some guys anyway. Whether he gave it to him as an ultimatum or not, there were undoubtedly some players that Lane would be looking to bring with him. And also, of course, some coaches that Lane would be looking to bring with him. So whether it's completely true or not, we don't know. But we do know just the talk and the rumors, they're going to follow him down the road. You're already talking about a guy who's had a bit of a checkered past as far as his loyalty to a team, the way he left Tennessee for USC. And part of it, you kind of understand. At that time, USC was seen as such a better job, and also you had his history at USC. But there also is a way you go about things, and timing is everything. So you got that issue. Now, as far as leaving USC, that wasn't his call. He got ran up out of USC, but he redeemed himself at Florida Atlantic, and he built his resume back up, and he built his profile back up, and he kind of grew up into the coaching candidate that Ole Miss would want. And look, Ole Miss got him, and he had a hell of a run at Ole Miss. Yeah, he comes there the end. He gets signed at the end of 2019, so his first year is 2020. 2020 is an absolute mess, of course, and there was a lot of external factors that made 2020 tough for all coaches. So you go 5-5 in your first year at Ole Miss. After that first year, 2020, you had 1 8-win season, and everything else was at least 10 wins. So just to kind of give you an example of why, or an explanation of why somebody might leave a program that you built up like that. Look, LSU just has a lot of advantages that most teams don't have. If I'm looking at deciding factors for Lane, first I'm looking at the talent pool. You have an endless talent pool in Louisiana with more D1 players, more NFL players per capita than any other state. And of course, some years it's going to be a little bit different, but on average, Louisiana is going to produce more talent per capita, per person than any other state. You don't have that second in-state school like a Mississippi State, like a Florida State, for LSU to compete with these players, or for these players. So even though NIL gets talked about and the transfer portal gets talked about so much, this is still a sport to where everything starts with high school recruiting. Yeah, you can sign a bunch of players and have a good year like LSU in 2023, but to sustain it, it starts in high school. You got to have that high school recruiting. And there was one guy, and I won't say his name because I'm not trying to attack him, and he pointed out on Twitter that Ole Miss has had better personnel than LSU every year since Lane got there. And look, that's simply not the case. He didn't say it exactly like that, but that's pretty much what he was saying. That was his point. So, look, I'll be the first to say recruiting rankings aren't everything. Recruiting rankings aren't perfect, but you don't have much to go on when it comes to kind of gauging talent other than recruiting rankings and draft picks. So let's look at some recruiting rankings for LSU and for Ole Miss, and let's look at what each program did with the talent it had. And these are overall rankings, so they're going to include transfers and high school players. And this is going to be on the 24/7 Sports, 247 Sports composite overall rankings for the last 4 years. In 2022, overall rankings, LSU was ranked 7th, Ole Miss was ranked 15th. 2023, LSU was ranked 4th, Ole Miss was ranked 17th. 2024, LSU was ranked 9th, Ole Miss was ranked 17th. 2025, LSU was ranked 7th. You know, they spent a couple mil on NIL. They were ranked 7th overall, and Ole Miss was ranked 16th. So Ole Miss was never higher than 15th in rankings, in recruiting rankings for overall rankings, including transfer portal players and high school players. And you look at what Ole Miss has done compared to what LSU has done, it's pretty much an indictment on the LSU staff. So what are you doing with all this talent? You haven't been out of the top 10. LSU has not been out of the top 10 in recruiting rankings in 4 years. Yet it's Ole Miss who's knocking on the door of the playoffs and about to get there this year. It's LSU who just fired a coach and is about to finish possibly 7-6, maybe 8-5. But either way, they're a far cry from a playoff team, a playoff program. So I think that says a lot about Lane's ability to get the most out of what he has, and also to evaluate. So if Ole Miss was no higher than 15th in the last 4 years, then that means that he's really getting the most out of these players, and it also means that some of these players are better than what people thought they were. Walter Nolan, everybody knew about him coming from A&M. You knew he was going to be a star. But what about Trey Harris? Like, who saw that coming from Trey Harris? So this is a guy who has proven himself as an evaluator as much as he's proven himself as an offensive mind. And he says, did he decide? Yes, he has decided. And the formal announcement will be coming tomorrow in Baton Rouge. LSU will be introducing Lane Kiffin as its latest head coach. College football is melting down. I think a lot of the college football fans are most definitely melting down. You got, predictably, a lot of Ole Miss people kind of melting right now, and you get it. You know, that's a kick in the ribs. You got a guy who's built the program up. You got a guy who's got got Ole Miss in unprecedented status as far as 11-1 going to the playoffs, getting a home game in the playoffs in the first round. And this is what I consider a step back in talent for this team. So if you had a guy who took you from mediocrity or maybe like a 8-9 win program to a playoff program, then yeah, I'd be pissed off too. I'd be disappointed. So you understand the perspective of the Ole Miss fans and also the administration as far as, okay, you can't coach in the playoffs. And I get the arguments for letting them coach. Believe it or not, I get it, because why not make the most of it? But you got a couple of things from Ole Miss's perspective. First, you chose to leave us, so we're going to choose to move on. There's some pride involved in that. But also, if you're going to move forward and we understand that you're taking this job, then how could you possibly be all in on Ole Miss? Like, how could you possibly be – how can we expect you to come into this playoff season with all of your focus centered around Ole Miss when you have to think about recruiting for LSU? You have to think about putting the staff together. You have to look at who's coming in the transfer portal, who might come, who can you I won't say illegally contact, but who can you expect to enter the portal, because you know you got some holes to fill. So if you're Ole Miss, there's no way you could possibly move forward with Kiffin as your head coach and think that everything is going to work out for the best. You got to go ahead and move on, put that chapter behind you, let Lane move on, and you look forward to what you're going to need next. Let the guys who plan on being there finish coaching that team. And in some situations, it's easy to point fingers, it's easy to blame, but there are no winners in some situations. Now, I'm not making a victim out of Lane. He's a winner. I mean, he's gonna come to LSU for reportedly $13 million in that neighborhood a year. The reports are 7 years, $90 million in that range, but nothing official has been announced. But at the same time, he gets put in a situation where either you can pick between losing out on an opportunity for what might be your dream job, or losing out on an opportunity to coach some guys that you've gotten into the program and go try to win a championship where it hasn't been done in 50 years. Or really more than that. But so you're gonna lose in one way or another in that situation. So I won't knock him too much, but the big takeaway here is now LSU has this guy. You got an established guy. You got a guy who the only hole in his resume that you can the biggest hole that you can come up with is how loyal is he? How long will he stay? So when it comes to that question, how many programs are really in the stratosphere to where you could even imagine him leaving LSU to go? Like, you could say, let's look at the elite programs, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Georgias. Well, neither one of those jobs look to come open anytime soon. And I know, look, it's college football. Anything can happen. But it's hard to picture a scenario where either of these jobs come open in the next few years. So you don't have a lot of options as far as him leaving LSU. Now, as far as it just plain not working out, that could always happen. But I'll say it again. Look, if 10 wins is the floor at Ole Miss, then imagine what it is at LSU. And that's no knock on Ole Miss. That's just looking at LSU's history, looking at LSU's resources, and it's just not a lot of scenarios I could see to where it wouldn't work out to where, at the very least, he was a perennial playoff program. When it comes to recruiting base, LSU is better. When it comes to what the administration is willing to, the lengths to which the administration would go off the field, there aren't many better places. They're going to give you all the support you need. Look, LSU might not have the money that some of these programs have, but it's one thing to have the money, it's another thing to spend it. LSU is willing to spend whatever anybody is willing to spend. So maybe it's not Texas, maybe it's not A&M, maybe it's not Oregon. But when it comes to spending, they're going to spend right with those guys. So you got all the support you need, and you look at the history of LSU's coaches. Look, Brian Kelly broke a streak. You had 3 straight LSU coaches that all won a championship, and Saban, Miles, and Coach O. So Brian Kelly came and he screwed that up. I won't kick him while he's down, but yeah, he messed that streak up. But if you Lane Kiffin and you're looking at these guys and you're like, okay, yeah, they won, but is Les Miles exactly a brilliant tactician? You know, is Coach O, and Kiffin knows Coach O, is he going to wow you on a whiteboard when he's drawing up X's and O's? So if those guys can win big, I can definitely win big. I'm Lane Kiffin, man. I might not be as brash as I once was, but I'm an elite mind. That's what he's thinking. So there's no way I'm going to come to LSU and not win a championship. That's what Lane is thinking. And look, he very well could be right. One thing I want to touch on too is I'm seeing a lot of kind of theoretical, man, wait till this thing ends. It's going to be ugly. And it very well could be. It could end horribly. But you also got to point out some differences. Because the reason a lot of people are saying this because you look at LSU's last few coaches, specifically the guys who won championships and still got fired, like Miles. So Miles and Coach O, they both came into situations to where the program was built. It's not like you're jumping into an old school and you got to fix it up. No, you got a brand new Lamborghini. All you got to do is drive it. So Les Miles came into that situation. And look, I'm not going to take credit away from these guys. I'm not going to knock anything that they did, but they didn't build programs. It's just what it is. They didn't build the programs up. So Les ends up winning, and give him credit, but he won off the strength of what Saban had built. Eventually, it fizzles. Like he hung on for a long time. Give him credit for that. He kept LSU to a respectable place in college football, to where LSU was always in that 9-10 win area. They were always going to start the season in the top 10, top 15, and just kind of fizzle out because they didn't have the offense. It's pretty much what it boiled down to. It fizzles out eventually, and Coach O comes in, and Coach O comes in. He's got Burrow, Jefferson, and Chase, amongst 10 other first-round guys. So give Coach O credit for putting it together. And he made some staff changes, too, that also led to that magical 2019 year. But as those guys left, you soon saw that wasn't going to be sustainable with Coach O, which is another reason I was kind of shocked at how many people were screaming for Coach O during this season, because I'm like, do y'all remember how that ended with Coach O? Y'all don't remember going 6-6 and 6-7 and finishing 2021 with less than 40 scholarship players? Like, y'all just forgot about all that? You had a wide receiver playing quarterback because you didn't have any scholarship quarterbacks. So, yeah, now Miles did a better job of sustaining it, but neither one could sustain a championship-level program. Miles was able to keep a good program going, a competitive program. With Coach O, it completely fell off the map. So you got a guy who's in Lane Kiffin, who I think is just plain better equipped to sustain a winning program than those guys. You got a guy who he's not going to be completely dependent on assistant coaches because he can take the offense. Lane Kiffin can take the offense. He doesn't – like, the offense isn't going to fall apart if he hires the wrong guy at OC. I could very easily see a situation where Charlie Weiss Jr., his OC right now, comes with him. But whether he comes or not, you're not worried about Lane Kiffin when it comes to offense. So you got a guy who's established, who's a lot of things that BK wasn't. And this isn't going to be a show to attack BK, but just comparing and contrasting these guys, you're going to see a lot of big differences. This is a guy who's not going to be completely dependent on assistant hires. He's a guy who's brilliant on one side of the ball. And where LSU fell short, obviously, was offense this year. You're not going to have to worry about offense as long as Kiffin is there. Off the field, look, I just said you had recruits that barely saw or talked to Brian Kelly during their whole recruitment. You had guys that just plain wanted to come to LSU, which kind of piggybacks off what I was saying earlier about the advantages of LSU. There aren't many places where you're going to fire a coach in the middle of the season and gain commitments. LSU has done that. LSU has added a commitment since Brian Kelly left, and they're looking to flip another one even before the announcement of Lane Kiffin's arrival. So you got advantages like that you're just not going to have in many places. So this is going to be probably the best situation that Lane has had at the college level since he's been coaching. When he went to USC, it wasn't USC of old. When he went to Tennessee had fallen on hard times. So you're going to have more in place at LSU than he's ever had. And I think you're going to see the results. I could easily be wrong. He might not ever win a championship at LSU, but I'll be honest. I would be shocked if he doesn't. I think he could even win at Ole Miss if he stayed there long enough. And this is with 15th and 16th ranked recruiting classes. I think he would have eventually got himself in position and won one at Ole Miss. So I definitely think that he's going to win one at LSU. Santa Kiffin. Tandy Kane. I'm currently tracking all business jet aviation out of Oxford Airport. Santa Kiffin is coming to town. That's all right. What will Kiffin and staff bring to the offense to make it more efficient? That's a great question by the Pelican Saint. And first of all, they're going to bring direction to the offense. One thing that we never saw from this LSU offense is a direction or an identity. What is it going to be? Everything was about compensating for the deficient offensive line, if you ask me. You had an offense that was built around screens and getting the ball out of the quarterback's hand as quickly as possible. And look, I understand that you're limited when you don't have a good offensive line, but you still have to have an identity. So you can't run the ball, and you built this entire offense off of pretty much throwing screens. So when you get to a point to where you get rid of your head coach, you get rid of your OC, you're kind of limited in how much better you can get. This is the middle of the season, and people want Alex Atkins, who's not even an offensive coordinator. They wanted him to just magically call successful plays. LSU was in a no-win situation at that point. You got an offense that was just really didn't have an identity. It did not have an identity. You got a quarterback who never got comfortable. Van Buren came in the Alabama game, and if you ask me, he played admirably in that game. But you didn't see a progression after that game where you like to see him get more snaps and get more comfortable. I think he actually regressed, and he got even more uncomfortable. Pretty much all of his decisions looked predetermined. If he was going to hand it off, if he was going to keep it, was predetermined. If he was going to drop back and just take off and run without going through progressions, was predetermined. When you look at him going through his progressions, that just didn't happen. He looked one place. I'm going to throw it to this guy. You look at the first pick yesterday against Oklahoma. I'm throwing it to this guy, regardless of coverage, regardless of what I see. He could have run the ball in for a touchdown on that first pick, but he didn't. So I think the first thing that you get a direction with an Ole Miss. I mean, with the Lane Kiffin offense. But more importantly, he's a guy who gets the most out of his personnel. If he's got a quarterback, he's had pocket quarterbacks, he's had dual threat quarterbacks. He can succeed with either one of them. It doesn't matter. Lane Kiffin can reach in the trash can and pull out an SEC quarterback because he can make one. So if you have natural talent to go with his play calling and his ability as a quarterback coach, then you're going to succeed in an Ole Miss offense. So he adjusts to his personnel well. He's great at tailoring an offense around the talent that he has. And I think another big thing with Kiffin is his sense of just the nuances of the game, when to go with tempo, when to take the shot, how to manipulate the defense to get the matchup he wants for that shot. It's just a lot of things that come easy. They come easily for Kiffin. He's really a high-end offensive guy who, as I said before, who would succeed at any level. So, that's what he would bring to the LSU offense. Tandy Kane says, put Coach O at the DC position. I don't know. I mean, you got a good DC. Now, look, you're going to have some people coming at Blake Baker to be a head coach. I believe that wholeheartedly. But he's a smart guy, and I don't think he's going to take a head coaching job just to take one. I think that Baker's going to be selective about when he takes a head coaching job because he can be. Why go somewhere where the odds aren't great if I succeed? And then you take a step back. So I think that Coach O is more likely a defensive line coach than the DC if he indeed comes back to the staff. Coach O in Baton Rouge, more enhanced than ever. Hell yeah, Coach O is LSU through and through. Yeah, Coach O is most definitely LSU through and through. And what you get in Coach O, other than a skillful D-line coach, is you got another energetic recruiter, a guy with relationships all over the state, but also all over the country. You got to remember, this is a guy who's a head coach at Ole Miss, who coached interim head coach at USC. So there aren't many places where Coach O can't go and recruit and talk to somebody. But yeah, he is absolutely LSU through and through, and we bring some energy back to that staff. Lane is a damn fool, just like Le'Veon Bell. He'll regret bag chasing. Hell, Nick Saban won a championship there and said, "The hell with this." All right, 325. Well, yeah, Nick Saban said, "The hell with this," because he wanted to be an NFL coach. He didn't leave LSU because, it sucks so bad and winning championships at LSU. I can't wait to leave. He wanted to be a head coach. That's well documented. He will regret bag chasing. It's not about bag chasing because I guarantee you Ole Miss would have given him whatever LSU was giving him. It looks to be in that $13 million a year range, but it wasn't a money deal because Ole Miss was prepared to do whatever it needed to do to keep Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin just sees a higher ceiling in what he can be long term at LSU, and that's understandable. The timing of the decision is no way around it because of college football schedule. No, of course he didn't want to leave the team in the middle of a playoff run, but it's now or never, and that's just where we are right now as a sport. So again, Lane Kiffin has apparently decided to leave Ole Miss for LSU. We'll have an official announcement as soon as tomorrow. I want to talk about Lane's legacy. Now that this decision has been made, look, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to hate him forever. And it's not just Ole Miss fans. It's going to be fans of the sport who are going to place hate towards Lane Kiffin that in reality should be placed towards the people who run the sport, because we should have never gotten to a situation. We should have never gotten to a reality in college football where you got to fire coaches 3 games into the season, or you're behind, or you got to make your hires when you still have bowl games, conference championships, playoffs. You can't wait for any of that, because if you wait, you're behind. You got playoffs coinciding, leading right up to transfer windows. You got early signing day in the midst of all of this. So everything is just kind of crammed up together. And a guy leaving at this point in the season doesn't necessarily make him a bad person. Now, some of the things behind the scenes possibly could be handled better. Ultimatums and all of that, and I'm taking this guy. You're gonna have some of that. You definitely want to avoid this stuff becoming public if you can. We live in a day and age where it's hard to do that. It's just the reality of it. And look, whether he gave Ole Miss an ultimatum or not, or his assistants an ultimatum or not, the same would be true. He was gonna take some guys that were gonna be useful to him, and that's on the staff, and that's also on the roster. There's no way around that. So that is what it is. And that kind of stuff is going to follow him. But at LSU, Lane will get a chance to place himself among the true elites, the true big dogs of the sport, the Kirby Smarts, the Ryan Days. If you stay at Ole Miss, you don't know if you get there. You come to LSU, you don't know if you'll get there, but you got a better shot. Could he win a championship at Ole Miss? I don't know, maybe. Could he win one at LSU? Definitely. It doesn't mean he will, but he can. I think most would agree that he can. I think everything is in place to where he could win possibly even multiple championships at LSU. And I say that understanding that the days of dynasties are gone. The days of Alabama or Georgia going on these runs where they're winning 3 out of 4 championships and going back to back, that stuff is over. NIL and the transfer portal has killed all of that. Look, Vanderbilt just flipped the quarterback from Georgia before signing day, a 5-star quarterback. So the dynasties are over because it's too much parity in today's game. But as far as where Lane Kiffin is now, he's a highly respected guy, especially as an offensive mind. Most people will put him among the good coaches, possibly the best coaches in the sport. You come to LSU and you win 2 championships, you are no longer among the best. You are elite. You are cemented as one of the best coaches in the sport. And if you win more than one, you're one of the best coaches in LSU's history. So I think if he stayed at Ole Miss, his legacy would have been cemented no matter what, because they were going to love him forever in Oxford. But you come to LSU, and now you get a chance to kind of raise the bar for what you can be and cement your legacy on a national level. You could easily stay at Ole Miss and be one of the best coaches Ole Miss has ever had. You can come to LSU and become one of the best coaches to ever coach at the college level. So, again, announcement coming tomorrow, and it is now unofficially official that LSU has decided, and Lane Kiffin has decided to join LSU as its newest head coach, and the Tigers have found their guy. I'll catch y'all next time. You can follow me on TikTok, follow me on Twitter at CFBLou, and I'll holla.